let me get this right on the way this all worked. I mean, who went to who about? Did you go to Kane to say, "Look, I want to do this," or were you looking for somebody to tell your story?
No.
Well, I had read Kane's book that he wrote with Michael Aloisi, Unmasked, and I brought it to my producer Andrew Barcelo, and the two of us decided that this is a story that the horror community, as well as the non-horror community, people who love just good documentaries, would love to hear. So we approached Kane's manager, and then who got us in contact with Kane, and we met, and it seemed to go very well. The meeting, Kane was on board with our ideas, and we loved working with him, and yeah, it just went so well from there. But
I always say that I think I have a pretty good feeling about people sometimes. Like when I met Mike Aloisi, he was, fairly unknown writer. But I got a good feeling from him at that first meeting. And when I met with Andrew and Derek, same thing happened. I had a really good feeling that these were the people that if this was going to be done, then Derek should be doing it.
Did you tell him right through that he was actually going to have to go to the place that, obviously the book's all about? I mean, there was no holds barred. Did you make that quite clear to each other that there was going to be no fudging of any issue, and you were prepared to sort of say the stuff that you did about your early life?
Well, I didn't really think that we were going to go to the hospital and things like that, but I certainly wasn't against it. It was kind of scary to think about it because that was a place of great pain and stuff, but we were going to visit the place that saved my life instead of the place that almost killed me, literally. And so when Derek said, let's do that, and then I thought, well, shoot, maybe can we go to Hawaii and investigate some of the places I talked about in the book there? And he was all for it. So I don't think we really ever discussed it at the beginning about what we were going to do, but as we went along, we just both agreed that we should do everything.
yeah, and getting a chance to go to the burn unit, our producer Andrew, he worked really hard with that group at the Bothan Burn Center, and they let us film in the old burn unit, the one that Kane was in, was just about, literally they just moved the patients out of there like the day before, and it was 3 days where it was empty with the gear before they were going to start a renovation to turn it into the new in-house housekeeping or some kind of a part of the hospital, and they ended up letting us have full access for that 3 days.
Was it more cathartic than you were expecting? I mean, it's extraordinary to me that when people look at you now and the things you've done, I mean, that you would have been bullied at school in any shape, size or form. It seems incredible that you were. I mean, yeah. So was that a really, really difficult place to go back to for you?
It was, and it's interesting that you bring that up now, because I was just thinking about when we talked about where we wanted to go and things we wanted to include in the film. There, because of everybody that's seen it or read the book or anything knows about the PTSD stuff that I have going on still to this day. And the one thing that would have been interesting to do is to go to that park where I talk about in the book and in the documentary, where I got beat up by those kids who I didn't even know. And it would have been interesting because that park still exists, but I just can't go back to that city because of my own issues as a result of the PTSD and stuff. So some of the stuff that we thought about maybe doing, we didn't do because of those issues.
You've done a really clever thing, I think, with the documentary. In fact, that you do go in thinking it's going to be all about, oh, yes, Jason, oh, this. And you get that whole, middle section of 40 minutes where you're literally open-mouthed. And I mean, I was crying through it because I thought it was, you were so moving to do it. And I mean, and I think that's what makes the documentary, that it completely turns into something that you're not expecting at all.
Yeah, I definitely always felt and Andrew always felt this way, because Andrew's our producer's loves a good horror movie, but he's not like a insane horror fan like I am. So his thought was always, when he read the book, it was, wow, what a good human interest story. And so we always wanted to make the film for not just horror fans, although obviously horror fans are like going to be an integral part for the film, and they're going to love it. I feel like there's so much more you get with the film, and I'm glad we were able to make a film that lets people, like, touches people the way it does.
And if that wasn't bad enough, I mean, I've mentioned this before, what you went through after that with the hospital and the fact they didn't treat you properly, but they could have done, and you only found that out.
Right.
It seems incredible that they wouldn't have actually tried to seek out the best care for you.
It almost seems like if I was watching this documentary or reading the book or whatever, I would think, come on, that has to be exaggerated. He must be telling it to make it sound more dramatic, but absolutely not. I still can't put into words how terrible everything was. As bad as it sounds to the viewer and everything, and horrific and all that, it still doesn't tell the real story. And it's so frustrating to think that. But, you know, it's the best I can do. There's just no way to actually put into words how bad everything was, because it's bad enough to be burned and treated properly. But when you have a guy that thinks he knows everything and doesn't know anything really.
Was there any footage that you took of him that was actually quite unbearable? Because it is quite, you know, it is very, very difficult to watch, and especially when you break down. I mean, was there anything that you thought, no, I'm not showing, we're not putting that in?
Well, we had 39 hours of footage of just Kane talking, so
nobody wants to see that.
So you know, and we went, like, I watched that quite a few times to try to, like, pick all the elements, but there were a couple of things that were even too difficult to put in the movie, but they just didn't work in the general story. So it was never an element of, oh, we don't like this, we won't put it in the movie. We tried to fit it, and it was just, a lot of times when, I always say this example, when you have a simple story, if you try to dissect a simple story, there's often 4 or 5 other stories that need to be told in order to have context with it. So sometimes a nice simple story that's good needs 3 stories around it to make it even better, and then you have a 20-minute section about something that isn't really that important. So a lot of times we would cut things if they weren't integral to Kane's actual story.
I mean, you could have gone 2 ways when this all happened to you. You either would have given up completely, but you didn't. You actually went on and still, you know, did stunts. Yeah. I mean, what was that? Was that just you saying, I'm going to do this, and, you know, erase all that horrible memory, or what?
Yeah.
Or did it make you so super safe that you were the best person to choose, I suppose?
I don't think it really did that. I can remember while being in the hospital, I never once considered maybe this isn't the line of work for me. It was just like, okay, let's get over this so I can get back to trying to get my career going. It was never even a consideration, but I do say that, you know, I did think about maybe not doing fire stunts anymore, briefly. So for a few years I didn't do fire stunts, and then I went right back to that too, because I always loved being on fire. I know it sounds ridiculous, but I always found it somewhat meditative almost, because when you're on fire, there's nothing else that matters except what you're doing, and you just feel like there's nothing else there. It's impossible to explain. I've tried so many times. People, it's relaxing to be on fire. Come on.
And just let's leave it the fact that you are still quite involved in sort of like in helping other people who might be in your sort of situation as well, which I think is another thing that really comes across very well, that you're not just sort of like talking about your story, you're talking about sort of like other people's stories as well, and I think that's actually a really good thing.
Well, yeah, I mean, when I see how the film touches a lot of people, because the career stuff is fun and interesting to hear about, but we have noticed that the most rewarding part of having the film is how people can relate to certain things. And, you know, not that I'm any big shot, but when somebody can say, wait a minute, I didn't think somebody like him would know how I feel about this. and and realize that, yeah, I'm just human also. I've been through some stuff, and I understand what you're going through now, and so I think I'm far more empathetic than before the burn, certainly.